there is one big theme in this chapter, and I'll give you a hint. All you need to do to find it out or figure it out is to look at Jofa Ragnarsson. So throughout this entire chapter, the overarching or dominant idea that we get is that Jofa Ragnarsson wants to be a human, okay? He is trying to change the entire bear kingdom to become more human, a more civilized version of themselves. And he really, really, really wants to desperately be a human. And in conjunction with that, have a demon. So our main theme in this entire chapter is humanity, identity, and the soul. So in the beginning, we get introduced to his palace, and the guards are taking Lyra all the way through to her prison cell, and they show her there's this huge palace that's been built, and it has carvings of bear warfare on the side of the palace. And from the beginning, we can see that the palace is filthy. It's covered in bird poop. It's really gross. It's not very well maintained. When she goes inside, she says the smell is horrific. And the fact that this palace is representative of what Jofa wants, but it's been broken down or it's been tarnished so poorly already, really goes to show that what he is seeking, the humanity and the humanness that he is seeking, he isn't really achieving. So the palace doesn't represent the bears. It doesn't really represent the bears. They symbolize Jofa Ragnarsson's desperate need to be human. But he's failing at being human, all right? So basically what we see is when Lyra gets into the cell and she meets Santilia, and he goes off on his mad rants and whatever, we see further over here that basically Jofa tried to establish a college on Svalbard because he wants to live like the way that they live in the human societies. In the beginning of the novel, the scholars in the retiring room actually laughed when the Palmyrian professor mentioned Jofa wanting a demon and wanting to set up a university. So them laughing over there at that as if it's such an insane concept, like he could never set up a university. That reaction makes it clear that the Panzerbjorn, the bears, aren't really part of the academic human world or even the university system, all right? They live on their own, they do their own thing, they're not connected. And Santilia's experience and the fact that he was backstabbed by a whole bunch of other college professors and he was kicked out of the academic world that is the college system also suggests that there are major barriers to trying to become part of those systems, even when you are in those places. So here we have one small little other theme that comes in, which is religion, politics, and control. It's very interesting when Santilia mentions that Jofa is trying to keep both sides, Mrs. Coulter and the Magisterium and Lord Asriel, whom he fears. He's trying to keep both of them happy, which is a slippery slope and a dangerous game to play, because once you start doing that, he doesn't really know where he's going to where it might all go wrong. So he is doing what he's doing. He's keeping both sides happy out of love and fear. Fear of Lord Asriel, love for Mrs. Coulter. And these are emotions that make him vulnerable. So in the beginning, when Lyra saw how unnatural the bears seemed to be in the environment with living in this fancy palace, that gave her information that showed her that she would be able to manipulate Jofa. And now as well, the fact that she knows that Jofa is allowing Lord Asriel to continue his research also helps add another layer of her understanding of how his mind works. And that's where she manages to formulate this plan that works really, really well. Additionally, we still have a little bit of religion, politics, and control in this section of the novel, because with Jofa going through all of these motions to keep Lord Asriel happy as well, you can imagine that at some point the Magisterium is going to take notice and they're going to get annoyed with him. So what's really fantastic is that very early on, Lyra catches on and she formulates her plan, and she takes advantage of the bears' confusion. This is so unnatural for them to have guard duty and to have to look after prisoners, and doing all these things in the way of human etiquette. So she basically takes advantage of their confusion from the beginning because she knows more than they are. And they're basically just a little bit confounded. So that's how she manages to get her foot in edgeways. And this all has to do with the fact that Yofa is basically obsessed with becoming or being a human. When she goes into the room and she finally sees him for the first time and she sees him holding the doll, that's when she's like, yes, I know, finally, I've got it all right. Because his obsession is so strong, he's fixating on the demon portion of what makes humans human. Because that's like, we know as the readers that that's the soul connection over there. But he sees it from his perspective as in only humans in that world have demons. Well, witches too. So there's obviously something very special and specific about that identity that makes it sort of exclusive. And he wants to be part of that. Yofa is failing, however, at trying to make himself something that he isn't. His castle is falling apart. Even the decorations that he's trying to do look really gross and tacky. And when he believes Lyra's story almost immediately, it shows that he's very vulnerable to being tricked, actually. Because, remember earlier in the novel, when Serafina said, maybe bears are able to be tricked, the more human they pretend to be. So, not only is he failing at being a human here, he's also failing at being a bear, okay? Because bears aren't supposed to be tricked. The end of the chapter is really just Lyra basically bringing up the fact that Yofa killed his own father. Now, first of all, that just goes to show really what a truly non-bear he is, because that is a very unforgivable and horrific crime. The novel implies that basically bears killing other bears is something totally out of the ordinary, okay? It's not something that bears do. So it goes to show again how detached Yofa is from being a bear, and he wants to solidify his humanity being baptized as a Christian, because that's clearly a very involved part of the human portion of this world. So being baptized as a Christian would basically represent Yofa's shift into being human, and once he gets that, or he does that, it presumably signals to him, or in his eyes, that he has brought the Pansabjorn to a level of equality in the eyes of human beings, or in the eyes of the magisterium.